How's it going, Yankee fans? With your boys, Alex and Ryan today, discussing Gleyber Torres. Definitely an interesting figure for the Yankees right now. Obviously, he was floated in trade kind of rumors at the deadline this past August regarding Pablo Lopez of the Miami Marlins. Had a really bad August after hearing about the rumors. We kind of know what Gleyber Torres is right now. He's gotten to be, I'd say, a decent defender. Let's say he'll be an average defensive second baseman. He can't really play any other position besides that spot. And he's a decent hitter, right? Like, he can slug a little bit. He can get on base at like a 30% clip. He only got 31% clip this year. In his career at 33%. Obviously those better seasons early on really boosted those numbers. But I'd say he's a decent player, can hit 20 plus homers a season. But ultimately, he's not going to get much better than what he is right now. So the question is, do the Yankees try and sell high on him after coming off a pretty solid campaign? Right now, they have him under contract until 2025. It'll be a free agent, so 2 years of control left on his deal. So there is value to Gleyber Torres. He is a starting second baseman on another club. He obviously has value. They were, obviously floating him in potential talks. The question is, would the Yankees consider floating him as trade bait, or should they just keep him as their starting second baseman moving forward? Ryan, I know you have a lot of thoughts on this. I'll give you an opportunity to give your explanation, your kind of detailed breakdown of Gleyber Torres. So, take it away, my friend.
Yeah, so Gleyber Torres this season was an interesting player. As you mentioned, he got off to a great start. It looks like this is a guy who has found his swing and is a part of this team for the future. And then trade rumors come out that maybe he was going to be shipped to Miami for Pablo Lopez. And then in the month of August, he doesn't perform as well. He really struggled, and there were a lot of reports about the fact that Gleyber was not okay with hearing those trade reports, and that kind of shook him up a little bit. And whether that's true or not, whether we're just trying to find ways to, put a reason or put a label onto what Gleyber Torres' struggles were, it was a weird season for Gleyber. He finished off strong towards the end. I would say that Gleyber did return back to being a good Major League Baseball player. OAA didn't really love him this season. They had him at 0 outs above average at second base, while DRS, defensive run saved, had him at 9 defensive run saved. So it's fair to say he's somewhere in between a solid to great defensive second baseman, though I don't know how long that'll last. And then the power was a lot better this year. He hit 24 home runs. He had hit just 12 home runs in 2020 and 2021. Definitely not where he was in 2019 with 38, but I think we can all agree that at this point, 2019 Gleyber Torres is not the Gleyber Torres that we're ever going to see again. That was a season that had the juice balls, definitely not the same version of Gleyber. But what is Gleyber's value on this market? I think a lot of people, either over or underestimate it. I think some people think you could trade Gleyber straight up for Pablo Lopez. You probably could not. Because remember, position player, guy who's a 2.5 to 3 WAR player, that's definitely less valuable than a pitcher who's a 2.5 to 3 WAR pitcher, because pitchers are a little more, teams value that a lot more. And you can go out and you can find an infielder to kind of be a 2 WAR, 3 WAR second baseman. So Gleyber's value on the market, I don't know if it's great enough for you to want to move him, but his arbitration number, which is near $10 million, could be high enough to justify wanting to move him if you wanted to open up payroll. I'm not sitting here saying Gleyber's a negative asset, but he is a guy making $10 million, and he is a guy who only has this and next year on his contract. So this isn't a young, guy with tons of control and is super cheap and cost controlled, perfect for a rebuilding team. He's more a guy that you put on a competing team, a team that's ready to go out and try to start winning baseball games, or a team that struggled last year and is still trying to find their win, or still trying to use their win now window. I could see Gleyber moved for a veteran starting pitcher, maybe someone who's a little older, doesn't have many years of control left, maybe a year or two. I look at a guy like Lance Lynn. The White Sox definitely need help at second base. They threw out Josh Harrison at second base for most of the season, Luis Garcia. These are not good baseball players. And Lance Lynn's a guy who's performed very well. He finished top 3 in Cy Young voting in 2021. He only has a year left and then a club option, and he's more expensive than Gleyber. You could see maybe a fit there, but it'll be tough to see. I wouldn't be opposed to the Yankees keeping Gleyber Torres. He's a good baseball player. Worst case scenario, he's traded at the deadline. And again, I do think he's a valuable baseball player. I think he's good. I don't think the conversation around the Gleyber Torres is Gleyber Torres a good baseball player or not? Rather, is Gleyber Torres that much better than Oswald Peraza at this point in their careers? And if he's not, or if he's not that much better than Oswaldo Cabrera, why keep him around when you know that you're going to need to pay a lot of money to Judge and pay a lot of money to fix other aspects of your team, so you can kind of save money there? So it'll be interesting to see what they do. I would be shocked if the Yankees were to trade him as just a salary dump. I think if they trade him, it's going to be for right price. They're going to very much think about this. It's not going to be like a Gary Sanchez, Gio Urshela, just kind of like throw them in a random deal and pray for the best. That's not the situation here. This is more so this is a kid who's very talented. The Yankees have a lot of infielders, and they could be looking to just give Gleyber a fresh start, and the Yankees save some money.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's okay. So one of the ways that I kind of foresee them trying to get rid of Josh Donaldson's contract is attaching him to a Gleyber Torres, proposed deal. So like I say, if you want Gleyber Torres, you got to take on at least the majority of Donaldson's contract for this year. Then maybe you give us a decent bullpen arm in return. Because like you said, Torres is valuable. Another team can utilize him pretty nicely. And the only reason that they would trade him is because, one, they have Anthony Volpe really close to being ready. And, you could shift Peraza over to the hot corner and Volpe at shortstop. And then you, of course, have DJ LeMahieu at second base, or Oswaldo Cabrera for that matter. Both of those guys can be their super utility men. You can have two super utility men that have primary positions. So I think that's a really good scenario for the Yankees. With that being said, Gleyber Torres, if they do keep him, is still an asset to this club. We know what he is, and that's like you said, plus defender, really good slugging second baseman. Struck out at 22.6% this year, not too bad. I'd like to see his walk rate get up a little bit more, 6.8% this year, maybe get up to around 8 or 9% would really help his on base percentage. Had a 115 WRC plus, indicates he's 15% better than the average player, but batting average is fine. Slugging is great. The on base rate I'd like to see improve. But otherwise, he was a solid player for the Yankees during the regular season. Went through a couple months that were, he'd have a great month and he'd have a bad month and then a great month and a bad month. So he was kind of just all over the place, didn't have much consistency. But his August numbers were really bad. His September numbers were fantastic. But then you look at his playoffs and they just weren't altogether that great. He hit .176 or just 176 with a 2.43 on base rate, didn't hit a homer, had 2 RBIs and 2 stolen bases and a 27% strikeout rate. So his playoff metrics were just bad. But historically, he's been a very good playoff hitter. He hit .281 historically with a 36% on base rate, 5 homers and 17 RBIs in 31 games. So I think this may have just been an anomaly, maybe just a down year for him in the postseason, because traditionally he was a lot better. But again, like you said, that 2019-18 version of Gleyber Torres really boosted those numbers pretty significantly, specifically his 2019 playoff sequence. Hit .324 with a 37.5% on base rate. Those really made it look a lot better. And then in 2020, you talk about the juice baseballs, 435 over 7 playoff games, 2020 at 435 with a 56.7% on base rate. So, this year we saw the baseballs kind of coming back to normal. Some really good pitching with Justin Verlander and Framber Valdez and, Shane Bieber, a lot of really good players that Gleyber Torres just simply couldn't hit. But, what do you think the Yankees could get back if they did trade him? Like if they were going to really send him, what's the value that he does hold? And, what position would they be looking to upgrade if that was the scenario they were going to go look at?
Yeah, so there are a couple ways I could see them do this. Number one, they could go out and get minor league talent. The Yankees traded a lot of prospects in the last 2 deadlines for Gallo, Rizzo, Montas, Benintendi, Efros, the list goes on and on. They traded plenty of quality prospects. So it could be likely the Yankees look for a prospect in a deal for Gleyber Torres. Could they do a prospect and a reliever? As we've talked about this a lot. The Yankees losing quite a bit of their bullpen, whether due to injury or to free agency. Could we see something like that where it's a reliever and then a pretty good prospect, and you kind of you get immediate value, immediate help in your bullpen, and then you get some future value down the road on a prospect that you may think is a good fit for this farm. You could see the Yankees try to look for an outfielder, right? The Yankees definitely are going to need some outfield help. Even if they sign Judge, the left field is still open. I don't see the Yankees moving Gleyber for an infielder, obviously. You're moving Gleyber so that you don't have another infielder, so you clear up your infield a little bit. Could I see them? I mean, that's really avenues I see it. Maybe, as I mentioned, Lance Lynn kind of pitcher, veteran pitcher who's pretty good, it's kind of their values down a little bit after this year. Doesn't have many years of control left, someone like that. It's interesting because I don't know how desperate the Yankees are going to be for major league talent in a Gleyber Torres deal. I don't know if the Yankees are going to look more towards the future in that type of deal. When they traded Luke Voit, they traded him for prospects. When they traded Gio Urshela and Gary Sanchez, they traded them for major league players. So, they're a little bit unpredictable in that regard. where you can't really sit back and guarantee the Yankees are going to get that type of player, this type of player. If they do go the prospect route, I think a lot of Yankee fans are going to be underwhelmed, but I don't think it's a bad route to take, right? Because let's look at Clayton Beeter in the deal we got for Joey Gallo. He absolutely shoved at the Double-A level. And that's a guy who I think is going to be in the Yankee bullpen. He could be in the Yankee bullpen at some point next season, or he could be a starter down the road in 2024. I mean, he's really, really good. Even, guys like Justin Lange, I know he didn't perform too well this year. They got him in the Luke Voit deal, but you take the upside. These are guys with great stuff, and you'll take that upside. The Yankees are probably going to be looking for pitching. I'll say they're looking for pitching if they go for a prospect. And again, they could go get a major league guy and a reliever, someone who's a little lower value, and then a prospect. Maybe the Yankees eat some of the Gleyber Torres money and get a lot more out of it. Or maybe, as you mentioned, they're moving him with Josh Donaldson. The Yankees are still going to have to eat money because you're asking a team to take on $35 million of payroll, which is a lot of money. I mean, that is a ton of money. Even if you're getting Gleyber Torres, teams may look at themselves and say, well, a guy like Colton Wong, he might get his option declined at $10 million. We could probably sign him for a little less than Gleyber Torres. So why would we take on Donaldson and Gleyber at the same time? It'll be interesting to see. Donaldson, if he gets moved, you're going to be attaching a prospect. It would be nice to get a prospect back in a different deal and kind of feel like you got rid of Donaldson and you didn't give up anything really at all because the guy who got back is just as good or maybe even a little bit better. So, I mean, Gleyber is an interesting player in the sense of, like, again, I don't see him going to a rebuilding team. He's not going to Miami. He's not going to Washington. He's not going to Oakland. He's going to a team that's on the precipice of trying to compete. Look at San Francisco. Look at, Chicago. Look at with the White Sox. Maybe even the Cubs. I know they're going to be in the shortstop market. Perhaps they fall short of getting a shortstop and they move to him. Minnesota is going to be losing Carlos Correa. Perhaps if they don't re-sign him, maybe they move Polanco to shortstop and they move Gleyber to second base. You could look at teams like, even just taking off the top of my head, Atlanta, Philly. I mean, these are teams that are losing infielders or are not great up the middle. And so, these are options. These are teams. There's going to be a market there. Just focus on playoff teams if you're going to be kind of putting together a team for a trade for Gleyber Torres, because those are the teams that are going to be wanting an impact major leaguer more. And then kind of temper your expectations. Don't look to you're not going to go out and trade Gleyber Torres for a star or for a number 2 or number 3 in your rotation. You're going to be trading Gleyber Torres for good major league talent or good minor league talent. Nothing better than that, just because of the nature of having 2 years left on his deal and making $10 million.
Yeah, the 2 years of control definitely has value too. So I do think that, you could get something in return if they're not going to try to utilize him as kind of a bait to take on some of Donaldson's money. But, we'll see how they operate this. We know that they're open to moving him, which means they have a lot of faith in Peraza. They have a lot of faith in, Anthony Volpe. And here's the question, though, is that if you have to decide between, do we trade Peraza, or do we trade Gleyber Torres, who are you trading? Because, I guess one of those probably has to be moved. Because Peraza, if you don't move him, he's your starting shortstop, and then Volpe comes along, and maybe then you kick out Peraza to the hot corner. Alternatively, you trade Peraza, you keep Gleyber Torres, Volpe ends up being elevated to shortstop, and then DJ can play third base. And then I don't really know who plays shortstop in the meantime. Maybe they just retain IKF until Volpe is ready. But if you have to choose between the two, are you trading Peraza or are you trading Gleyber Torres? I imagine it's Gleyber, no?
Yeah, it's tough. I would say, I would bank on Peraza's value. Like, if you ask me who's the more valuable player on the trade market, it's Peraza. So I would be more inclined to move Gleyber. But, if an opportunity opens up in a trade, if there's a star player, if there's a player that is kind of like that missing piece almost that becomes available that we're unaware of, then you're going to be more willing to move Peraza and kind of keep Gleyber there. I think Gleyber provides the Yankees the insurance of, if the Yankees are put in a position where there is a really good outfielder or a really, really good pitcher available, or a really good whatever position it may be available on the trade market, and Peraza has to go in order to make that deal, Gleyber is not a bad player. It's not like you're going from, a great player to a terrible one. You're going from 2 players who I think are very close in terms of talent level. I will say Peraza provides a lot more base running value. I think the defense is going to be better from Peraza than it will from Gleyber. Just naturally, Peraza as a glove first guy, but I do think the bat from Gleyber is better than the bat from Peraza. I think the raw power is better. I think the hit tool is a little bit better. So ultimately, I think we're looking at 2 guys who are 2.5 to 3 WAR players at second base. The difference is, again, with Peraza, he's a lot cheaper. He's going to be here for the next 6 years if the Yankees retain him, and he's more valuable in the trade market. So Even if you keep Peraza and you trade Gleyber, if he plays well for half a season and Shohei Ohtani becomes available on the market and he's still with Los Angeles and the Yankees say, screw it, let's get Shohei Ohtani, I imagine Peraza is going to be a very pretty lovely asset on the market to trade because he's an established major leaguer who would be 23 by the time the deadline is. All I'm saying is, it's tough for me to choose between one of the two, but in terms of if I have to be objective, I'd rather trade Gleyber. But if the opportunity arises, I will trade Peraza. I'm not going to commit to an answer in terms of like one guy has to go, this guy has to go. I don't even mind keeping both, but you're going to have to move one of them at some point. It just depends on what you're looking to get back and what the market shapes out at for trades.
Right. Yeah. So, guys, I'd love to hear your perspectives and opinions below in the YouTube comments about Gleyber Torres. If you think they should keep him or move him, what his future may look like. I think we've seen the best of him up to this point. I don't think he's going to get any better than he's been. But he is a solid player that does offer you some slugging power and some good defense. So, it's hard to replace that sometimes. Maybe you're better off just rolling with Gleyber Torres and keeping him around and, just making sure your second base is locked up and not having to worry about it potentially being a liability down the stretch. So that is an argument to make that I think is very important to mention. But guys, hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Make sure to like and subscribe as always. And we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Yankees episode.